When you're with the Irish NFL show, this is our week 2 preview. We're on to the fourth slate of games now. We've broken up the previews into 4 different parts. And we're going now to the Sunday night games where we have Dolphins at Pats, an intriguing AFC East matchup column where you've got a Pats team that showed up a little better than a lot of people had expected against the Eagles last week, gave the Eagles a lot of difficulty, got everything that we would certainly think about from a defensive perspective from the Pats. When Belichick has time to scheme, he can slow down any offense. We all know that. And boy, is he going to have to be at his very best to slow down the Dolphins based on what we saw last week.
Bill Belichick, Mike McDaniel, Vic Fangio. It's apocalypse now because the Dolphins are venturing into the heart of darkness. And I think this should be an absolutely fascinating game. You have many Machiavellian geniuses involved in both franchises. Fascinated to see again what the Dolphins bring out. Right, last week they were just fantastic. They were so much fun to watch, and I have no doubt that Bill Belichick will look to slow them, and he probably will slow them to an extent. I just don't know if you can slow them enough. I think the fact again, like the 49ers, they're healthy. I do worry a little bit about the line. I think that the Patriots will be able to get more pressure, but I think that the Dolphins have enough weapons in order to get it done. But the Patriots are much improved on last year, and Bill O'Brien showed both. I suppose the folly of Bill Belichick last year, they looked like a competent offense. I think this could be one of the games of the weekend, but I have the Dolphins edging it.
Yeah, the Dolphins, I have to say, killed me last week. I know when we did our very late previews and we did our squeaky bum time and we looked at whether you'd stick or twist based on the picks that we had. I took the Dolphins out of that wildcard slot. I thought ultimately, no, the AFC East isn't going to send 3 teams to the playoffs, and the Dolphins to me were the ones that were over the trapdoor. So I ended up backing out of that pick, and yet in week 1 they showed themselves to be everything that I'd originally hoped that you would see for them. Having said that, I think, it's early season, and you think when the Dolphins are healthy, when the weather is good, when everything is going for them, and you see the very, very best of what they can do, you're going to see the kind of thing that you saw in week 1. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think you're going to see it every single week. I certainly don't think you're going to see it against the defenses that can be a little bit more exotic and maybe do a little bit more than we saw the Eagles in week 1. Eagles have all that talent, but there is some softness there as well, which can be exploited. I think with the Dolphins against the Pats, I think we're not going to see 466 yards from Tua again. I just don't think that happens against this New England team, and I don't think it happens in New England. But I still think, like you, Colin, that ultimately they'll come out the right side of this one. I think it's a Miami win for me. Brian, how do you see it?
Yeah, it's a full house, guys. I'm going on the Dolphins. I was annoyed with myself that I got away from them. I was recalling our June selections, and I said on that particular show that I felt they'd be 2-0 after these 2 games. So I think that's going to come to pass this weekend. I was looking at, like, a lot of people were going to be disappointed in some ways with Mac Jones last weekend, but he got a lot more time than he would have got last year, and people are kind of quietly impressed with the 2 rookie guards that play for the Patriots. I'd imagine Fangio is going to be scheming up something to give them a bit more of a difficult game come Sunday night. In a way, the Dolphins, people touched on it when the schedule came out, that they'd be a little bit annoyed that they didn't get the home games immediately, because obviously with the weather and the adverse heat for traveling teams, they always find ways to win those games. But if they get out as 2-0, going back down to Miami for their first home game, it's significant, and they'll probably be happy that they're going to Foxborough in September. Like, you don't really want to be going on a Sunday night football in November, December at the Foxborough when the weather's adverse, and it kind of suits what Belichick wants to do. I think it'll be a tight enough affair because it's a divisional game, but I think there's just too many weapons for me on this Dolphins offense now, and they should get over the line and find a way to beat the Patriots. I think it might see something similar. I think the Patriots find a way to stay in the game and do what Belichick does, but for me, it's Dolphins win.
Now, a warning to people heading into week 2. There's 2 Monday night games, of course. It's a double header. You got Saints, Panthers, and Browns, Steelers, which we'll get to in a moment. Firstly, though, how is Saints, Panthers a primetime Monday night game? It's a terrible bit of scheduling. not one of the games I have to confess that I'm really particularly looking forward to this weekend. To me, it looks like Saints all day long. I think the Derek Carr experiment so far has been a success. It's been everything that Brian said it would be. Brian, are you going to keep rolling with your Saints, who you have backed all the way to the NFC Championship game? If that's where you're heading, you're certainly rolling over the Panthers to get there.
Yeah, anybody who's taken time out to watch Inside the NFL this week would have saw some of the footage and coverage of Derek Carr in terms of that last particular play when he was going to the offense coordinator and said, "Let me go deep and I'll kill this game off." And essentially that's what he did. But he didn't have the best of games, with all due respect. He was up and down last weekend. I thought he would have been a little bit more comprehensive. But I have picked him to go to the championship game, and I feel a little bit more comfortable because Boomer Esiason, who I like to listen to every day on New York Sports Radio, has also selected him to go all the way to the championship game. So I can't be too far off it. People the likes of him are selecting them as well. But in this game, I am going to Saints. Colin rightly called it out. You had 3 rookies last weekend. The most concerning one was Bryce Young and some of the throws he made that he just didn't, read the play. And obviously Jesse Bates was there to take away the interceptions. Saints defense, that played quite well last weekend, 3 picks. I could see them picking off Bryce Young in this game a couple of times. It's a steep learning curve for him early on in the season, 2 divisional games. But unfortunately for the Panthers, I think they're going to come out both games with defeat. So I have the Saints winning this. And it's 12:15 kickoff on Monday night, Connor. So, we might be able to keep the eyes open and get a little bit of that game before bedtime.
Yeah, I think that'd be a nice way to send me off to sleep personally. Is it Panthers in the hurt locker for you, Colin, or do you see any way out?
Well, I would agree with you in terms of the scheduling. And this is Gettysburg. This is the war of attrition. But the Saints kind of got out of jail thanks to the refs last week, and he made, I suppose, some, like Carr made one or 2 nice throws, but there are others where he really left too much meat on the bone. But Brian has talked about it. I mentioned it about Bryce Young is a concern. I just don't think the Panthers have the weapons. I don't imagine this will be a classic. I'm going to go with the Saints, but for anyone listening, watching, if we have gone the full sweep against your team, be delighted, because once again last week that proved to be the curse for so many of the teams. So Panthers fans, stay up on Monday night because your team will probably win, because we have said they won't.
Colin, if you're staying up on Monday night, you will stay up, of course, for the main game, and it's a proper main name on Monday night, a divisional clash between the Browns and the Steelers. Interestingly, that, of course, is the reverse fixture of the one that's coming up for the NFL Watch Party, the first ever NFL Watch Party in Ireland, where the Steelers are hosting in Croke Park against the Browns in the return fixture there. Browns in week 1, Colin, were as good as they would have expected to be, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. We can still see a lot more, obviously, from Deshaun Watson, but Myles Garrett really looks to be having an awful lot of fun out there. When Myles Garrett is having fun, you don't want to be on the other side of it. That's an intimidating set of eyes for Kenny Pickett to be staring down heading into this game. For me, and I know I was pretty high in the Steelers in the offseason, I struggle to see them coming out of this home game with a win. I have to say, I think the Browns could be heading to 2-0. How do you see it?
This is Braveheart for me, essentially, where you're just the oncoming tsunami, and you're hoping your QB can hang tough in the pocket. The Browns, Brian was absolutely spot on in terms of his preview of the Browns. Their defense was fantastic last week, and absolute nightmares for the Bengals. The Steelers are missing Cam Hayward. They're missing Deontay Johnson. They're at home. Mike Tomlin, won't want a similar type of performance. I expect a response, but I struggle to see them scoring enough points. I don't think the Browns will have it as easy as they had it last week, and the Steelers will be able to move the ball better than the Bengals. But a few weeks ago, I'd have said the Steelers. Not now. I think the Browns are going to 2-0, and the Steelers are falling to 0-2.
Brian, the beauty of having divisional round games or divisional games early is that, you know, it really sets up the first part of the season nicely. I suppose the curse is you get a lot of the tasty matchups out of the way before we really see what way the teams are actually settling, and you're kind of robbed of the glory of seeing these bitter rivals go up against each other with something meaningful on the line when they're actually genuinely trying to win to seal their way into the playoffs, or to knock a hated rival out of that slot. But at the same time, the Browns won't care a little bit about that if they've got 2 divisional wins in their pocket come week 3. And that seems to be the way it's heading, unless you're going to tell us otherwise.
I think it'd be huge. I think it'd be significant to get out first 2 games, but no one, like, with all due respect, would have fancied you to win either game, and you get out over 2-0 in two divisional wins. It only, for me, kind of puts this team to where I expect them to be, which is to be in the playoffs, because they can only improve from there. This game, for me, I know we find ourselves getting carried away, and then, you know, something goes amiss, and then the other team finds a way of reacting. And we touched on certain games, you know, on Sunday, where we think teams might bounce back after a difficult week 1. I just don't see it. I just don't see how Kenny Pickett will have the time of his life against this Browns defense. I think they'll struggle offensively to put
in the comments, Brian, and I'd actually forgotten about this, and Luke Walsh has reminded me here, and it's a great point. Teams play the 49ers, and the pattern is, over the last couple of years, they lose the following week because they get beaten up so badly.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. You put so much into week 1. You focus so much on week 1. You find your way getting yourself a win, or you go 100% and come out the wrong side of it, and then you have time to prepare. Like, even tonight's game will be interesting to see who's prepared best with a short window between Sunday and obviously Thursday night. But the Browns would have had a week to look at the coverage, in which what the 49ers did. Like, I called it out, and Columns touched on there. Like, I always thought this Browns defense would be one of the marquee defenses this year, and it could lead them on the way. I see Browns winning. To me, I think this is going to be similar to what we saw last Sunday. I think they'll shut them down, and they'll just allow the Browns to methodically have a couple of drives, score some touchdowns, and let their defense take care of business. Mike Tomlin might have a different story on it. He has ways of navigating victories when teams don't expect, which is why he's always had a great winning record. But for me, the Browns going 2-0.
Great stuff. All right, that's the entire slate previewed now. Remember, if you missed the preview of the Thursday night game, and, you know, as we're on YouTube live here, it's still Thursday night. We're still anticipating that Vikings-Eagles game, which is coming up 1:20, effectively Friday morning. I know it's the Thursday night game in the States, but obviously, as Irish NFL fans, we know it's effectively the early Friday morning game. We have, for anyone listening on podcast, all 4 of our week 2 previews available separately wherever you get your podcasts. We've broken it up into the early games, the later Sunday kickoffs, and then the primetime games on Sunday and Monday nights. You can check them out wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see how the week 2 games go as we go across the weekend.